Have you ever found yourself standing in the kitchen calling your adult child's name for the third time, maybe even the fifth, and still no response? You're not yelling, yet, but it's coming, isn't it? And all the while you're thinking, why is it so hard to just answer me the first time? Maybe it's when they come to visit and you ask them to put their shoes in the closet or help clean up after dinner, and somehow you're repeating yourself like a broken record. It's exhausting, and after a while, it doesn't just feel like a small annoyance, it starts to feel like disrespect. And I get it. You've spent decades raising these kids. You've worked hard, sacrificed, loved them through every stage of life, and now, when all you want is a bit of help or cooperation, you feel ignored. That hurts. It's not about power or control, it's about being seen, heard, and respected. That's why today I want to talk about something that matters deeply, not just to your peace of mind, but to the health of your relationships with your children. How to get your kids, grown or not, to actually listen to you the first time you speak. Now, I'm not talking about yelling louder or repeating yourself until you're blue in the face. That's not the answer. And it's not about teaching them a lesson either. This is about real strategies that help you communicate more effectively, regain your calm authority, and improve connection. Let's start with something simple, but powerful. Learning to think like a child. I know that might sound strange at first. You might be thinking, I've already raised my kids. Why would I want to think like them again? But hear me out. See, when we talk to our kids, especially when asking them to do something, we do it from our perspective as parents, as adults. We have logic, we have years of experience, and we usually have a clear reason why we're asking them to do something. But what we forget is that they don't necessarily see it the same way. Imagine you're 8 years old again, playing with your toys or watching your favorite show. And suddenly, your mom calls out from the other room, asking you to clean up your mess. From your point of view, why would you stop what you're doing to do something you don't want to do? Especially if there's no real consequence right away. That little moment of hesitation, that mental calculation, is this important enough to stop what I'm doing? Is still going on even when they're adults. Now apply that same idea to a 30-year-old who's glued to their phone, or who's juggling work stress, or maybe just doesn't think your request is urgent. The truth is, they may not be trying to be disrespectful. They're just not seeing the situation from your perspective, and you're not seeing it from theirs. So the first strategy is to pause, take a breath, and ask yourself, if I were in their shoes, what would motivate me to listen? This doesn't mean you have to coddle them. It just means you tailor your approach in a way that speaks to their current mindset. If you can offer a reason that makes sense to them, not just to you, they'll be far more likely to respond right away. And that brings me to the second strategy, one that might feel a little personal, managing your affect. Now that's a fancy psychology word that just means managing your emotions. Let's be honest, when your child ignores you for the fourth time, it's hard not to snap. Maybe your voice gets sharper. Maybe you start to raise your volume. Maybe your body tenses up without you even realizing it. That's completely normal. But here's the thing. When your emotions get big, your authority shrinks. I know that might feel backwards. After all, when we were raising our kids, a raised voice often got the job done. But over time, especially as they get older, kids learn to tune out the yelling. They don't respond to it because they've been trained to wait until the serious voice shows up. That means your calm voice, your normal tone, your gentle request. They treat that as background noise. And that's not what we want. What we want is for your calm, steady voice to be the one that matters. We want your words, spoken once, gently, to carry weight. That's not about being louder. It's about being more centered. It's about showing up with a calm face, calm body, calm voice. Not because you feel calm, but because staying calm gives you real power. When you speak with that quiet strength, your kids, no matter how old, feel it. They may not respond instantly at first, but over time, they start to associate your voice, your words, with clarity and calm leadership. And that's when the real change begins. I remember a grandmother who told me her grown daughter never listened unless she snapped. She felt like she was always nagging, always repeating herself. So I asked her, "What happens when you stop talking after the first request?" She said, "Well, nothing." And that's where we started. She practiced making her request just once, with a calm voice, and then waited. No follow-up, no repeating, no rising tone. At first, her daughter didn't respond. But after a while, she started to realize, Mom's not going to keep asking. I need to pay attention the first time. It took a little time and a lot of patience, but it worked. And it can work for you too. There's something deeply powerful about staying grounded in moments when we feel ignored. It sends a message, not just to your kids, but to you, that you are in control of yourself. That your voice matters. That you don't need to shout to be heard. It's not about demanding obedience. It's about showing leadership in a way that invites respect. You're not just telling your kids what to do. You're modeling how to stay calm under pressure, how to communicate with love and strength, and how to hold space for healthy adult relationships. You see, when we combine the first two strategies, thinking like a child and managing our own affect, we set the stage for a new kind of conversation with our children, one where they feel heard, but also one where you are heard. And from there, something remarkable starts to happen. You stop feeling like you have to beg for their attention. They start to notice the tone of your voice less and the meaning of your words more. They start to respond not because you're louder, but because your voice carries clarity and conviction. That's where change begins. That's where respect grows. That's where stronger connections are built. So, if you've ever felt like your words are getting lost in the air, or worse, dismissed altogether, know this: you're not alone. And you're not powerless. You have tools. You have wisdom. And with just a few shifts in how you approach the conversation, you can start to see a real difference, one moment at a time. Let's keep going. Now that we've laid that foundation, understanding how your child thinks and staying calm in your delivery, we can start using those tools in a more strategic way. It's not just about being heard, but about creating a pattern your children start to recognize, respect, and eventually respond to on the first try. Think about how you respond to things in your own life. If you turn on the TV remote and nothing happens, you try again. Still nothing. Maybe you change the batteries or press harder. But eventually, you realize something's broken, right? That remote has lost its reliability. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And so you either replace it or just stop using it. Now I know that's a strange analogy, but hear me out. When our words come with no result, again and again, they start to lose their power. And worse, our children begin to expect that pattern. Mom will ask 5 times. Dad will get louder. Nothing happens unless they raise their voice. But what if, just what if, your very first request, said calmly and clearly, carried weight all on its own? That's where the third strategy comes into play, pairing communication with a consequence. Now don't let the word consequence scare you. This isn't about punishment. It's about predictability. It's about helping your children, at any age, understand that when you speak, something follows. Not eventually, not maybe, but consistently. And that's the key word here, consistency. When I say something to my child, whether they're 5 or 45, there should be a result tied to it. If I ask them to be home by 6, and they come home at 6:30 and nothing happens, then next time they'll assume 6:30 is just fine. But if I calmly express what the outcome will be, and follow through, even gently, it teaches them that my words matter. Not because I'm loud or angry, but because I'm consistent. One grandfather told me his adult son never returned borrowed tools. He said, I ask him nicely, then I ask again, and before you know it, 6 months have gone by. So the next time his son asked to borrow something, he said calmly, Sure, you can borrow it, and I'll need it back by next Friday. If it's not back, I'll assume you don't need to borrow tools anymore. He wasn't mean. He wasn't angry. He was just clear. And guess what? The tool came back on Thursday. When we pair our communication with natural, clear consequences, we don't have to resort to nagging. We don't have to shout or chase after respect. Our words carry value because they're followed by action, just like the bell Pavlov rang before feeding the dogs. Eventually, the dogs didn't need the food. They heard the bell and responded. Not because they were scared, but because they learned the pattern. That's exactly how it works with our kids. If your request consistently leads to a meaningful result, they begin to listen the first time, not out of fear, but out of trust in your leadership. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Once your words start to carry weight, once your calm requests lead to consistent follow-through, your children start to rewire how they interpret your voice. And that leads us right into the next strategy, one that might sound a little poetic, but it's incredibly practical, turning your words from garbage into gold. Let me explain what I mean by that. Over the years, without even realizing it, we sometimes train our kids to treat our words like background noise. We say something, they ignore it. We say it again, they keep doing what they're doing. We repeat it a little louder, and maybe, just maybe, they glance up. And if we get frustrated enough, then they respond. What message have they learned? That our words aren't really important until they come with emotion. That calm words are optional, but raised voices mean action. In other words, they've learned to treat our words like garbage, something they can tune out, while our tone or frustration becomes the trigger. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can retrain that response, and it starts with consistency. The first time you say something, softly, clearly, must be the moment that matters. That's when the expectation is set. That's when the consequence is on the table. You don't repeat it. You don't change your tone. You just follow through. And over time, your words begin to change in their eyes, from background noise to something valuable, something worth tuning into. That's when your words become gold. This is especially powerful for those of us in our 60s, 70s, and beyond, because we've lived enough life to understand what really matters. We don't need to chase authority with volume or prove ourselves through arguments. We've earned our wisdom, and when we speak with calm clarity, it reflects that wisdom. But even more than that, turning our words into gold is about dignity, ours and theirs. We treat our own words with respect by not overusing them. We treat our children with respect by giving them the opportunity to respond without pressure or panic. And over time, that kind of respect becomes mutual. Now, some people might say, but what if I do all of this, and they still don't listen? And I get that. Nothing changes overnight. Habits, patterns, years of old communication, all of that takes time to shift. But every step you take toward more intentional, consistent communication moves the relationship in a better direction. One small shift, one less repetition, one moment of calm follow-through. It adds up. And your children, whether they're living at home or calling from another state, will start to notice. Your voice becomes something they lean into, not tune out. Your presence becomes something that centers them, not something they brace against. That's the beauty of this kind of communication. It's not just about getting your kids to do something. It's about getting them to hear you, to respect you, to reconnect with the strength, love, and wisdom you've always carried. And that brings us to something even deeper, something that doesn't always show up in parenting books or advice columns. But it might be the most important strategy of all. Because when you strip everything else away, the strategies, the tone of voice, the follow-through, what's left at the very heart of it all is the relationship. And that brings us to the final and perhaps most powerful strategy, working on the relationship itself. Now, I know you've probably heard that phrase before, focus on the relationship, and it might sound a little vague or even overused. But here's the truth. Relationships are the soil everything else grows from. If there's distance, tension, or unresolved hurt between you and your child, it doesn't matter how calmly you speak or how consistent you are. The ground just isn't ready. But if the relationship is nurtured, if there's a foundation of trust and love, your words have a place to land. They're not bouncing off hardened ground. They're being planted, and over time, they take root. You see, your job as a parent, even when your kids are grown, isn't to control them. It's not to manage their choices, fix their problems, or keep them from every mistake. Your job is to love them. Not just when they're easy to love or when they agree with you, but all the time. No matter what. Even if they push back. Even if they disappoint you. Even if they don't respond the way you hoped. Because the power of even if love is unmatched. It's steady. It's safe. And it's deeply needed, especially in a world that can feel loud, critical, and unforgiving. I remember a man in his 70s telling me about his son, who had drifted away over the years. They barely spoke. There had been arguments, old wounds, misunderstandings that piled up like bricks in a wall. And every time he tried to reach out, it seemed like nothing changed. But he kept showing up. He didn't chase. He didn't beg. He just kept loving. One day, years later, his son called out of the blue and said, "Dad, I always knew you were there. I just didn't know how to come back." That relationship didn't heal overnight, but it started with the simple, steady commitment to love, no matter what. And when your child knows, truly knows, that you're there, that you're not going to pull away, punish, or shame them when things get hard, something in them softens. It doesn't matter how old they are. We all long for that kind of love. Now, none of this means you let people walk all over you. Loving someone no matter what doesn't mean tolerating disrespect or letting boundaries disappear. In fact, it's the opposite. When you are grounded in love, you're better able to hold boundaries with clarity and strength, because they're not coming from a place of anger. They're coming from care. When your child hears a request from you and knows it's not just about control but about connection, they're more likely to listen, because the request is being made inside a relationship that feels safe and strong. It's not transactional. It's not manipulative. It's loving. And the beauty is, you don't have to wait for your child to change before you start changing how you show up. You can choose today, right now, to take one small step toward deeper connection. That might mean calling just to say hello, without an agenda. It might mean apologizing for something that happened years ago, even if you weren't the only one at fault. It might mean simply listening, without correcting or fixing. Those moments matter. They accumulate. And they quietly tell your child, "You matter to me. I'm not going anywhere. I still see the best in you." When all 5 of these strategies come together, when you understand your child's thinking, manage your own emotions, follow through with consistency, speak with calm authority, and build the relationship from a place of unconditional love, something shifts. Your home gets quieter. Not because people are walking on eggshells, but because they don't have to shout to be heard. Your words gain power. Not because you've demanded it, but because you've earned it through patience, steadiness, and care. And your heart feels lighter. Not because every conversation is perfect, but because you're no longer carrying the weight of trying to force something that doesn't need to be forced. You're planting seeds. You're watering them with wisdom and kindness. And over time, that creates change. So if you've ever felt like your kids have stopped listening, if you've worried that your voice doesn't matter anymore, please hear this. Your voice does matter. You still hold an incredible power, not through control, but through connection. And no, it's never too late. Not in your 60s, not in your 70s, not ever. I want to invite you, right now, to take a breath, to remember who you are. You're not just someone's mom or dad. You're the one who showed up, the one who kept going, the one who still cares deeply, even when it's hard. That kind of presence is powerful. And when you speak from that place, when your words are calm, clear, consistent, and rooted in love, they're like gold. People listen. Your kids listen. Not out of fear, but because they feel something stronger than rules. They feel respect. And that respect starts with you. So, wherever you are in your parenting journey, whether you're still in the thick of it or you've stepped back and are watching from the sidelines, know that your influence never disappears. It just changes shape. Keep showing up. Keep speaking truth with kindness. Keep building bridges instead of walls. You've got this. And if this message spoke to you, I hope you'll share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what resonated. Tell me what you've tried, what's worked for you, or what hasn't. I want to hear your stories because they matter. You matter. And if you haven't already, hit that like button and subscribe to Strong Elderly Life. This is a space for real talk, practical tools, and encouragement for every season of life. We're building a community here, and you're a part of it. Here's to living your best life at any age, and to being heard, valued, and respected for exactly who you are. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.